The sword is the soul of the samurai, but true mastery lies in knowing when not to draw it. In the twilight of the Sengoku period, a time of endless war and shifting allegiances, Japan was a land divided. Amidst the chaos, one name commanded respect across the land: Tsukahara Bokuden. Renowned for his unmatched swordsmanship, Bokuden was not just a warrior but a philosopher of the blade. His reputation was built not on the number of foes he had slain, but on his wisdom and the principles he upheld. One crisp autumn day, as the leaves turned gold and the air grew sharp with the promise of winter, Bokuden journeyed through a remote mountain pass. The path was narrow, lined with tall cedars whose branches intertwined to create a canopy above. As he walked, he heard the distant sound of men's voices, rough and mocking, growing louder as he neared a clearing. There, standing in the middle of the road, was a group of ronin, samurai without a master, their once honorable paths now twisted by the hardships of life without purpose. These men, their armor battered and swords worn, had turned to preying on travelers, extorting money with threats of violence. The leader of the ronin, a man with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward with a sneer. "Old man," he called out, his voice laced with disdain, "this road belongs to us. Hand over your money and we might let you pass. Resist, and you'll be cut down where you stand." Bokuden regarded the man calmly, his eyes betraying neither fear nor anger. "I carry no wealth worth taking," he replied evenly, "but I do possess something more valuable, knowledge of the sword." The ronin laughed, their voices echoing through the trees. "Is that so? Prove it then, or die where you stand." Bokuden's expression remained serene. A demonstration of true skill should not be marred by the interference of the unworthy. There is an island nearby, surrounded by water, a perfect place for such a display. Follow me, and I will show you. Intrigued by the old man's confidence, the ronin agreed and followed Bokuden to an island in the middle of a lake. The water was still, reflecting the orange glow of the setting sun. Bokuden gestured to a small boat tied to the dock. "This will take us to the island," he said. The ronin, eager to test their mettle against the legendary swordsman, climbed into the boat with Bokuden following them. They rowed in silence, the tension palpable. As they approached the island, Bokuden was the first to step onto the shore. He moved with the grace of a man who had walked the path of the sword for decades. The ronin, sensing the moment was near, readied themselves, hands on the hilts of their swords. Bokuden turned to face them, his hand resting lightly on his own sword, his eyes calm and unblinking. "Watch carefully," he said, his voice low and commanding. But instead of drawing his blade, Bokuden suddenly jumped onto the boat and with the force of his jump, sent the boat drifting back toward the island, far out of reach of the ronin. The men, now stranded on the small island, looked at each other in confusion and then anger, realizing they had been outmaneuvered without a single strike being made. They shouted in frustration, their cries carrying across the water, but Bokuden simply bowed his head slightly, turned his back and began paddling. His strokes could be heard over the ronin's disbelief. As he reached the mainland, Bokuden paused and looked back at the island, now barely a shadow in the distance. "The greatest victory," he murmured to himself, "is one that does not require the sword." The story of Tsukahara Bokuden teaches that true mastery of the sword, or any art, lies not in the use of force, but in the wisdom to avoid it whenever possible. Power, when combined with restraint and strategic thinking, becomes something far greater. The most honorable victory is the one achieved without violence, where the enemy is defeated not by the blade, but by the mind.